Welcome to the Toledo Museum of Art and the Little Theater. I'm Scott Boberg, Manager of Programs, and I'm glad that you have all successfully navigated the intricate footwork of the Little Theater, and you made it to your seats. We are so excited to have this program this evening, but before I introduce Toledo Museum of Art Director Brian Kennedy, there's a couple little announcements that I want to make about some upcoming programs and a couple little bits of business. And one is I have my cell phone, not because I'm expecting a call, but it is a reminder to myself to turn my phone to silent. So if you wouldn't mind doing the same thing as well. If you are overcome with desire to photograph this event, you may do so. We just ask that you turn off the flash. It is my pleasure and honor to thank our Thursday evening sponsors for programs here at the Toledo Museum of Art, Huntington Private Client Group. So please give them a round of applause for their support. Now, I think many of you are looking fine tonight. And the reason I mention that is because tomorrow night in the Great Gallery at 7 p.m., we are hosting our Kehinde Wiley inspired fashion show. All right, I can tell from the reaction. If you come to the Great Gallery between 6 and 6:30, 6:30 is the hard and fast cutoff point for signing up. So get your best Kehinde Wiley inspired outfit on and come down to the Great Gallery. I'm so excited that local artist and designer Merce Culp is organizing the event. The DJ will be DJ Mike Hartel, aka DJ Money Mike, who you may remember from our sneaker exhibition celebration. And that's happening in the Great Gallery at 7 p.m. tomorrow night. Those of you who don't already have tickets for Saturday evening's concert in the Peristyle, I encourage you to get some tickets for Laith Al-Sadi. Maybe that name isn't familiar, but if you ever watched The Voice in the last year or so, he was a runner-up on The Voice. He is an Ann Arbor-based blues guitarist and singer who is extraordinary. And he's playing in the Peristyle at 8 p.m. on Saturday evening. So please join us for that extraordinary show. And then on Sunday in this very theater, the Ohio Poetry Association is releasing a new book of ekphrastic poetry, that is poetry about works of art. And that is a brand new publication. We will have 24 poets reading. They promise to read only 2 minutes each. But it's a release of this brand new publication that features multiple works from the Toledo Museum of Art collection, including a work on the cover. So lots of great things coming up just in the next few days. We look forward to seeing you again at all of the other upcoming events. Now, it is my great honor and privilege to turn the microphone over to Toledo Museum of Art Director Brian Kennedy.
Well, good evening to you all. I'm looking forward to this evening because we're going to be talking about art education. And all of you know that the purpose of the Toledo Museum of Art is? Art education. Yeah, it's so easy. It's just art education. And it has been for many, many years. So this evening we have two national leaders from America here with us. But I want to acknowledge just first that coincidentally when we were organizing this event, I had been in November in Leuven in Belgium and met with Professor Ernst Wagner. And Ernst is the lead researcher at the Academy of Fine Arts in Munich. He's a professor. He's the UNESCO Chair in Arts and Culture in Education at the University of Erlangen-Nuremberg. And he trained in Munich, but he's a great expert in a favorite subject of ours, which is visual literacy. And he has headed a large document, a group of people who created the Common European Framework of Reference for Visual Literacy. And this is a whole book of competences about visual literacy. So it was a shock to me to find that they'd already done all the work. So he's a consultant at M. Leuven, which is a museum in Belgium, which is being redesigned on visual literacy principles. And a number of years ago, the team from M. Leuven came here to Toledo. And so last November, when they invited me to go there, it was to say that, you know, when they came to Toledo, they really got inspiration about how to create a museum on visual literacy principles. So we're beginning to create a network around the world. So Ernst, can you stand for a second? And let's acknowledge Ernst Wagner and all the great work he's been doing. Okay, well, thank you. Now, our two guests. Don't I look good there between these two beauties? Oh my God, this is a self-improvement slide. There's no doubt about it. Okay. So on the left is Gretchen Dietrich, who joined the Utah Museum of Fine Arts staff in 2008. She's been on the board of the Association of Art Museum Directors, AAMD, our professional organization, which has 244 members and is over 100 years old. There's no organization in the world like it. And she currently chairs its education committee. The UMFA is a university campus museum, but also the State Museum of Utah. It's in Salt Lake City. It has, I think she said today, 21,000 works.
You're telling my whole
Well, I'm not going to say any more about her. Okay. She's great, okay? And on the right is just Laurie Fogarty, and that's just it, isn't it? No, okay, right. Okay, all right. So Laurie became director of the Oakland Museum of California in March 2006. She previously directed a children's museum in Sausalito, and before that was 12 years at the SF MoMA in San Francisco. She's been on the West Coast. She chaired the education committee prior to Gretchen, and she is the current vice president, and from May this year will be the president of AAMD. So please make Laurie and Gretchen welcome. Okay, Gretchen's in control. She's an educator. Okay, will we do it your way, Gretchen? No. Okay. So the way we're going to do this is just 10 minutes, and anybody who goes over, if she goes over 10 minutes, you all start waving in the air, right? That's the way we do it, okay? So Gretchen is going to tell us all about her wonderful museum, and particularly the ways that she's been engaging people. These are two great educators, so welcome Gretchen Dietrich.
Well, while we're getting our, thank you so much, that's perfect. I just want to say what an honor it is to be here with all of you today. I'm on a mic, so do I have to stand here? I do. I've never been here before, and AAMD was here a few years ago, and I missed the trip down here to Toledo. What an incredible museum and an incredible community you have here. What a wonderful leader and a terrific staff. As Laurie said, when Brian asks you to do something, you just say yes, right? And it's just a real great pleasure. And I also just want to say a shout out to Larry Nichols, your senior curator. In 1987, I had an internship at the Philadelphia Museum of Art with Larry Nichols. And unfortunately, he's in Maastricht. He is not here, so we didn't get to see each other, but we had a lovely email exchange. So now the clock can start now. And I want to briefly tell you about my beautiful museum. So this is on the campus of the University of Utah, the Utah Museum of Fine Arts. It's a gorgeous building designed by Marchetto and Silvetti, a Boston-based architectural firm, a 17-year-old building, and a significant building in our community. We are, as I said, a campus museum, so we really do serve the 32,000 students and the faculty and the staff of the University of Utah. Those are mountains behind the building there. And as such, this is the first university museum I've ever been a part of. Your director led Dartmouth's museum before coming here, and I love University Museum because it really is all about learning and teaching. It's about engaging people with real, authentic art objects and opening their minds both to the past and to the future. And that's just who we are. It's how we think about our work, and it's very easy to have that conversation. These are 3 graduate students and one of the professors from the art history department. It's also about fun. It's about engaging people in learning to figure out that they actually love art and they love art museums. They just didn't know it yet. And a lot of our students, I think, have never been into an art museum before. And we really do a lot of different kinds of programming totally aimed at making them have fun with their friends, fun with their boyfriends and their girlfriends, and feeling connected and alive and learning all along the way. So yes, we have dance parties. We are also the community museum. So we're the Civic Museum of Salt Lake, and we serve all across the state of Utah. Utah's a very, very family-friendly place, and so we've had strong family outreach programs for many, many years, both on campus and in the community. And it's a terrific way for us also to engage people in the diversity of the world and the history of art making and culture in the world. This is our Chinese New Year celebration we do almost every year, and thousands of people come, just like you guys. So the mission of our museum is very broad and on purpose to inspire critical dialogue and to illuminate the role of art in our lives. And our fancy pants consultant tried to get me to narrow that down, and I refused, because this is aspirational. We do really strive to make this happen for everybody, no matter who you are, where you come from, what you know, what you don't know yet. So it really guides us as we work. So this is Utah. That is my husband on the right. After you live in Utah for 10 years, you go up to the top of the resort, and then you want to hike further with your stupid friends. So this photo is taken by my stupid friend Kevin, and then my stupid husband is following him up. And so far, knock on wood, no avalanche problems yet. This is Kodachrome Basin. That's me last weekend, 4 hours south, near Bryce Canyon. And there's just a picture of the city, in case you're not familiar, surrounded by the Wasatch Mountains. So the environment and the landscape matters a lot to us out west. And I'm originally from the East Coast and worked in East Coast museums, but I'm a Westerner now. This is Spiral Jetty. This was created in 1970 by Robert Smithson. It's the greatest work of land art in the world. I would argue that it's one of the most, maybe top 10 artworks made in the 20th century in the world. Really important. And it's 90 miles north of Salt Lake City. It's very easy to get to it now. The road has been regraded. But my museum works very much together with Dia Art Foundation, which technically owns the Spiral Jetty. That's a whole conversation. How do you own a bunch of rocks in the lake in Utah? But we do a lot of work with others in our community to raise awareness for the jetty, to bring information and knowledge to our own community about the power and the importance of this artwork. Raise your hand if you know Spiral Jetty. Yeah, okay. Next time you come to Salt Lake, you gotta go out there. And you can get information about it on our website. We're closed right now, and that's a unique, challenging, but a unique opportunity for any organization to kind of shut the doors, stop business as usual, and really rethink everything you do, ask yourself why you do it that way, and find ways to do it better and to have a deeper impact in those you aim to serve. So this is a very invasive project. It turns out keeping 50% relative humidity on a high, dry desert inside a building is not easy, and it's not easy on the building. So we've done this very invasive project, and in the meantime, we are really rethinking everything. We're reinstalling 6 of our collections. As your director told you, we have about 21,000 objects in the collection, an encyclopedic collection, a terrific teaching collection, everything from ancient Greek, Roman, and Egyptian to modern and contemporary, and really rethinking and the way that we show art, the way we engage people in looking at art, bringing lots of things up from storage that people haven't seen before, and thinking a lot about our visitor experience. I say to my staff, I want us to be the most welcoming, most easy museum to just drop right into. We're doing a lot of conservation work and fixing some things up, which has been really a fun and challenging process. We've reached out and hired curators from other institutions to help us with certain collections that we don't have the manpower or the woman power in the museum. So we'll have all new installations of African and oceanic art I'm really excited about. We also have a very ambitious contemporary art program, and I would argue that contemporary art, art of our time, is a really important way to be especially relevant and connected to the university community, to the lives and the hearts and the interests of younger people in particular. So we have started a number of different programs, but one is a changing special exhibition space where we show the work of young emerging artists, global contemporary artists. What's really great too is that it's a way for us to bring diversity and difference to our community, which can feel, it's actually not as quite as homogenous as you might think, but it is a way to bring difference and diversity. This is Yuki Kihara, a Samoan Japanese transgender artist, and it was a joy to work with her. She helped many people, my staff, on campus and in the community to think differently and to learn about all sorts of things. Her work is very much about climate change as well as gender identity, and this is her in a 19th century mourning dress in Samoa after a recent hurricane storm event there. A beautiful series that she did. This is another artist we are very proud to have featured, a man named Dwayne Linklater, who's Osakego Cree from North Bay, Ontario, a First Nation Canadian person. And he did an amazing project where he basically appropriated other Native American work and in partnership with the Marriott Library on our campus, 3D printed copies of American Indian work. So people showed up to a conversation with Dwayne thinking, oh, I'm going to learn more about, Native art. And they instead found this incredible man who lives 4 hours north of Toronto talking about appropriating one another's culture and sort of more about Duchamp than it is about Native American art. It was an incredible conversation. And then this is a fuzzy slide, sorry about that, but I really believe in the museum should be a site for people to use, to improve their lives, to connect with other people, to think, to meditate, to move their body. We really need to be, in our contemporary society, a place where everyone can find themselves, whatever way that is possible, to feel comfortable and to be able to be present and to participate in some way. So I am a big proponent, as I think many of you are here, in finding ways that work to bring people here, to bring people in. We do a statewide outreach program, which, I remember giving a hard time to a colleague who ran a museum in Delaware. It's a 6-hour drive from Salt Lake City to the southernmost border of our state. And I have museum educators who drive an hour on a dirt road to a one-room school. We're talking about rural America. So we have a teaching collection of actual objects. These kids are wearing gloves and touching art objects, all tied to the state curriculum and deeply rooted in helping them to learn better. And the last thing I wanted to mention is a whole new initiative for us, which we're calling ACME, Art Museum Community Education. And it's a two-pronged thing. ACME Sessions, as in sort of like jazz improvisation, is a deeply collaborative, totally off campus, totally out of the museum community engagement program around a variety of hot topics. This was hip hop and education. We've done them on the transgender community. We've done them on straight up art education more directly, and then the hip hop community of dance and spoken word. A way for us to really get out of our galleries and to get to know better the people who we really aim to serve without any desire or stated purpose that we want them to come and visit the museum. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. That's not what it's about. It's about my museum, my staff, and me learning better to understand what people want and how we can make their museum experiences, their cultural experiences work and really sing for them. Here's another shot from a beautiful summer day last year. Here's a dance. We did a fabulous, Salt Lake's a big dance community. We did a wonderful workshop where if you came to the workshop, guess what? You were dancing. And it was, at the end, we actually did video it. It was not long after the election, and nobody said anything political. There was no need to do that, but we heard people say things like, I wasn't sure about this. I felt uncomfortable. It felt so good to interact with other people and to connect across differences with people in this room. And I'm really proud of that. I think that's very much in the realm of the work that we aim to do. And then the component that we're still kind of figuring out, and it's hard for museum directors, I don't know how well you know Brian, we like to know all the answers. We don't like to be surprised by the questions. And for me, this has been challenging, but we're doing a lab. It's called Acme Lab, and it's a space where we're going to be committed to just doing stuff. We're going to do it with artists. That's who we are and what we care about. This is Las Hermanas Iglesias. It's actually a sister collaborative artistic group. So Janelle is on the right and Lisa's on the left. And they're going to do a show for us. And all I know, it opens in August, and all I know is that it's about play, and it's about bringing people together through really quite high-minded concepts and ideas of play and interaction. I know you guys have done work here in this museum on the concept of play. It's got a ton of ways, I think, in which different kinds of people can plug into and connect with this program. And it's my second to last slide. I love their work. It's so fun and cool. They commissioned someone to create life-size piñatas of them, and then they got a bunch of children to like knock the crap out of them, and everybody ate candy. Now, if that's not art, I don't know what is. And that's my last slide. Again, I'll turn it over to Lori. I'm deeply honored to be with you, and I thank you so much for the invitation.
Good evening. Well, let me echo Gretchen's comments. We feel like we've been on a junket, to be able to come here and spend time together, spend time with your very generous and gracious staff and your board. So it's been a real treat, and happy to be here. The Oakland Museum of California, I'm calling this the Museum of the People for the 21st century because this is my museum, and I thought it was really big until I came here. Because it's 4 city blocks and 7 acres. And it opened in 1969 as the result of 3 museums that had dated back to the early 20th century, a museum of art, a museum of history, and a museum of natural sciences, all coming together. We can't say it's really under one roof because there are multiple roofs, but it was a revolutionary building for its time. It's an indoor-outdoor space with a large garden, and it was actually designed to be kind of the antithesis of the traditional museum, kind of moving away from, the Grand Palace to being more like an urban park. This opened in 1969, and so just picture, if you can, for those of you who can still, have the memories from 1969, in the Bay Area. And this building is across the street from the Alameda County Courthouse, and literally when the museum opened, the Free Huey trials, the Black Panther trials, were happening across the street, and we'll come back to that. So this is our space. We opened in 1969. We did a major building renovation in 2010, really the first time that the museum had been renovated. So this is our new kind of entry space. And we are a multidisciplinary museum. So we have 3 large collection galleries, each about 30,000 square feet of art, history, and natural sciences. And this is our art gallery. And what we have really tried to do here is, as Gretchen was talking about, is to make these spaces visitor-centered, to make these as welcoming and accessible and relevant for a very diverse population. Oakland is one of the most diverse cities in the country. It's about 35, no majority population, 35% Caucasian, about 28% African American, about 25% Latino, about 18% Asian American, and all of the above, the rest of the population. So we work with 3 languages. We have Spanish, English, and Chinese signage throughout the galleries. We really do a lot of work in kind of bringing together different periods of time. And what you can see here in the background, this is our art gallery, and we've installed it thematically. California land, California people, California creativity is actually topographic maps from our science gallery that we brought up into the art gallery. Here's another lot of interactive spaces, a lot of hands-on, a lot of comfortable seating in the galleries, makes a huge difference to people hanging out. And you can kind of see the span of our collection from a great Thomas Hill Yosemite painting on the right to a Richard Mizrak photograph of the Oakland Berkeley fire from 1991. History gallery, weird things. We have a lot of them. Our collection actually numbers close to 2 million objects, artifacts, and specimens. And our natural sciences gallery, which really looks at the environment, the natural world of California, but with people. Unlike a lot of natural history museums, we actually show evidence of human habitation in the gallery. We also have a long tradition. So the Museum of the People was really this idea from our very DNA that the museum was an educational institution and celebrating the diversity of California. So we've had an annual Days of the Dead celebration for 22 years. So that was kind of the first. I've been at the museum 11 years, and really the first few years were about our own space and our own physical transformation. And then a few years ago, we thought about what does it mean for the museum to leave the building and to truly be part of the community. So this is our Oakland Rover. It's a little electric vehicle that goes out. It's like a transformer. It opens up, and we do art-making activities at community festivals and events in the neighborhood surrounding the museum. And much as Gretchen was talking about with the ACME program, it's really not a promotional vehicle, so to speak, to bring people to the museum. It's really about us being part of the fabric of the neighborhoods. So recently we've done some pretty bold exhibitions that I want to talk about, and this is a series of exhibitions we've done about Oakland. And this was a show we did last summer. We did it in less than a year. It was a complete co-created collaboration with an artist and with members of the community. It was called Oakland, I Want You to Know. And it was about the gentrification of Oakland and how West Oakland in particular, really focused on a specific neighborhood, is undergoing the pressure of a lot of new people coming in and new economic development being welcomed in some ways, but also real concern about displacement. Yes, those are marijuana plants. We said we did not collect these, and these were a loan because we were just holding them for a friend. So we did an exhibition last summer, from April to September, called Altered State, Marijuana in California. So being a multidisciplinary museum, we can really tackle these subjects about what are the urgent issues happening now in our city and our state that are going to make a huge difference in where we live and what our experience is. Legalization of marijuana was on the ballot in November, and it is an incredibly complex topic. So we were not taking a stand on pro-legalization or anti-legalization. We were saying this is a subject that is this is an issue that's going to change our state, and we need to understand it. It had art elements, history elements. It was actually curated by a natural sciences curator, and we presented these, plants like they were the Hope Diamond, in the museum. We also had interactive spaces within the gallery. This was a programming space that we had in the Altered State exhibition for people to talk to experts about cannabis. And then the most recent exhibition that we did, which we just closed a couple of weeks ago, it was truly transformative for our museum and for our community. It was called All Power to the People, the Black Panthers at 50. The Black Panther Party was founded in Oakland in 1966, has had a huge impact on the psyche of Oakland. This was an art curator that organized this exhibition. This is a contemporary art piece by Sam Durant. It's called Monument to Huey Newton for the Alameda County Courthouse. Probably will never happen at the Alameda County Courthouse, but this became an iconic piece. You could sit in it, you could touch it, and it became the place where everybody did selfies at the front of the exhibition. The 10-point platform that Huey Newton and Bobby Seale wrote, the really manifesto of the Black Panther Party, which was so powerful as you walked in the show because it could have been written today. And then it went into art experiences. This was a section of the show called Culture Moves the Message Forward, and we had work by contemporary artists as well as photographs of the time. We had all of the copies of the Black Panther newspaper. Interactive pieces. This is another contemporary art piece by Hank Willis Thomas that visitors themselves could participate. Another great image from the show. So this broke all records in the museum's history for attendance. I mean, we knew this would be a powerful exhibition. At the time it was coming, we had no idea. We had 45,000 people in the month of February alone. We had 700 people join as members in the last 5 days of the exhibition. And then I just had to show this because you all did the Out of the Box, The Rise of Sneaker Culture exhibition, which it's still on view at the museum. It's been a great success for us as well, especially paired with the Panther exhibition, really powerful combination. We, outside of the contracted space of the exhibition, also brought in 3 pairs of Steph Curry shoes. I know there are a huge number of Golden State Warriors fans in Ohio. So I had to show these. So Steph Curry auctioned these 2 pairs of shoes off. One is the Ghost Ship, and I'll talk about this in a minute, and Oakland Strong to raise money for the Victims Fund for the Ghost Ship fire, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And we showed these shoes in conjunction with Out of the Box. So one of the things that in this kind of trajectory of what does it mean to be a museum of the people in the 21st century is as I've kind of thought about it in my own development, first being visitor-centered and then really being part of the community, and then what does it truly mean to be responsive to community needs? And we had a very tragic incident in Oakland in December. I think many of you may know about an artist's warehouse that had a fire, and 36 people perished, and they were mostly young people, and they were mostly artists. And we had staff who were there and former staff who were there. Luckily, nobody on our staff perished, but an artist that we had worked with on the Oakland I Want You to Know show died. And so we were able, and a week later, we have an amazing Friday nights program to respond to what our community really needed, which was a place to come together and mourn. So this is a large community chalkboard on our plaza where all the names of the victims were written. We did an artist installation with the artist who had worked with with Alex, who had perished, to do kind of an installation piece with all of the victims' names. And then the Friday night after, it was a Friday night when the fire happened, the following Friday night, really bringing together hundreds of people in our community. We blew bubbles, we had battery-lit candles, and coming together really to respond to what our community needed. And then this was another response to community need. This is the Women's March in Oakland. About 90,000 people gathered in our city. The whole thing started right at the museum. So this was the crowd surrounding the museum. And I said, in this particular case, the urgent community need we met was restrooms. It was a women's march. Of course there were not enough restrooms, right? So we opened our doors for a lot of people who were needing us in a different way. And then finally, I'll just end with our Friday night. So 4 years ago, we started to do a street party at the museum, and partnering with Off the Grid, which is a kind of food truck conglomerate in the Bay Area, we closed down the street. This is every single Friday night year round. So this is a difference in, being in California, because it gets, in January, it's like freezing. It's like 45 degrees out there. But we still do it. So every Friday night, this was where the drought was our friend, because we did have a few years with no rain on these Friday nights. But we close down the street. We have live music. We have a band. We have DJs. We have kids dancing, and it is all of Oakland. And for us, this was throwing out the welcome mat. In the summer, we have between 4,000 and 5,000 people a week who come. And, there's a lot of question, as I'm sure there is in many museums, about, well, is this really the museum experience? And if people are outside drinking a beer and having a slider, is that experiencing the museum? We know these people believe they're coming to the museum. This is a cultural experience, and it has truly become a kind of revolutionary experience, I think, for us in these current times. So there we are doing the Cupid Shuffle, which is how we close every Friday night at the museum. So that's it.
Okay, well, aren't they a dynamic duo, huh? So, thinking about your presentations and knowing how engaged you are with art education, but you're on the board of our association. If you were to say an answer to the question, what are the biggest issues for art museums in America today, what would you answer?
Well, I think it's really the issue about relevance. I mean, I think it is how do we ensure that these spaces, these collections, these facilities, these programs, this art that we care so much about are going to be relevant to audiences that are very different than the traditional museum audience. And we know from studies that the National Endowment for the Arts and others have done that there is, it's interesting, there's not, and this is why I said at the end about the cultural participation is, on the street, eating food, listening to music. We know that many people of many different demographics participate in culture. They don't necessarily come to traditional arts institutions like museums or theaters or symphony halls. and that there is a huge disparity in terms of younger people, and particularly people of color and low-income people participating in museums. So our country is changing. It's, you know, as our former AAMD president said, the most important document for museum directors to read is the US Census. So I think that ensuring that these spaces truly are for everyone and make a difference in everyone's lives is the biggest challenge.
I would say, now that I've had a chance to think about it, thank you. I think that's exactly right, and I would also say that more pointedly, maybe it's the issue of diversity and inclusion, and sort of, you know, making sure that as we go forward, that everybody feels welcome and able to fully participate in what we do. I used to work at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, which, you know, is a palace built by a wealthy white woman. And it's a magic place in Boston, if you've ever been there. But I worked with kids who lived in that neighborhood in West Roxbury. And as I worry, as income inequality continues to sort of go forward the way it's going, I worry about people perceiving too much distance and too much difference, where it's hard if you haven't studied art or you haven't gone to college, or what if you don't speak English and to go and read a label, it's only going to be in English, right? I really think it's relevance, but it's also making folks understand that we want them to come and being ready for them when they get there.
Quite a number of museums have been rethinking the way that they use the word education. And so here we have a director of education and engagement, and other museums, they've got directors of interpretation and engagement. Do you see any difference between education, interpretation, and engagement?
Well, for interpretation, I think of that quite literally in sort of helping people to find meaning in what is before them, right? So it's a little more strategies and ways in which we help folks to make meaning from that aesthetic experience. Another word that's getting used a lot to define these departments is learning. And that's interesting too. So what's the difference between learning, education, and engagement? I think engagement and engagement strategies is where we can get a little more creative and a little broader in how we think about is yoga in my Great Hall or eating a cider outside of the Oakland Museum. You know, is that learning? Is that engagement? It's definitely engagement.
Yeah, I mean, I am a firm believer. There was this, and I apologize for those of you not in the museum field specifically. I feel like this is really inside baseball, but everything used to be called museum education, and there has been this move to now talk about engagement or learning or interpretation, and I think it's an and both. I mean, I think that the educational aspect, that we still play a very important part, which is actually helping audiences learn about art or art history or the creative process, but that isn't all we do. And I do think engagement indicates that we are meeting our audience halfway. We don't know all of the answers, that they bring their own understandings and interests and perception and stories to it, and how do we make that connection where they are equal partners to us. And it is interesting, I often listen to the way people talk about, especially exhibitions, and we're going to tell them, and we're going to teach them, and they're going to learn, and it's like, that's actually not really how visitors experience exhibitions. So I think that moving away from, we are the authoritarian, we do have some authority and we do have expertise, but how do we share that authority more and recognize the expertise that comes to us from our visitors? And it's less about us telling them than us sharing stories and them bringing their stories to us as well.
So are there any areas, any sources of inspiration outside of museums which could be really great examples for how to do art education?
Well, I know that we have looked a lot at libraries. Actually, libraries have become kind of town squares and commons. Not so much around arts education, but around civic spaces. And I think some of the libraries that, really provide a public service beyond, checking out books, we've taken a lot of inspiration from. I think that the interesting thing is how much we are doing with multidisciplinary, not just art, history, and science, but multi-sensory kind of experiences. And Brian, you and your staff were talking about this earlier. Is those spaces that really provide that kind of, it's music and it's food and it's social being huge. And I think we look, street festivals, farmers markets, those kind of places that people really want to go. They want to go with their family. They want to go to be with other people. We call it bridging and bonding. The bonding, like I'm going with people I know and I'm going to experience with them. And then, that's Friday nights. Like, it is everybody, and I'm going to experience it with people of all different kinds of backgrounds. And we have so few places that can happen. So those are the inspirations, I think, for us.
I've been to Disneyland twice, and it was horrible and really hard for me and super hot. And but I looked at it through the sort of lens of sort of visitor experience and engagement. And of course, Disney's really famous for really thinking through things. I was still really miserable, but that's just me. And of course, my kids loved it, right? But the ways in which Disneyland has changed. So we went last year, and then we went 3 years before, and everything now is in English and Spanish. Everything in California. I've heard that it's not the case in Florida. So there is that they are thinking about making sure that no matter who you are, where you come from, what language you speak, that you can navigate the space of that place. But I don't know.
What about you, Brian?
Yeah. How would you answer that question, Dr. Kennedy?
Well, I think, in this city, I think I've learned a lot from the public library. I think that's a really important suggestion. I think I've learned particularly a lot by looking at the way that mega churches attract audiences. I think it's really, really interesting, the idea of the cellular church and the idea of creating cells, basically, pods of community. I think that sort of rather biological approach has worked historically and is how you accrete into an audience. But anyway, they're just some thoughts. But I suppose I was supposed to be asking the question. So here's one back to you, Gretchen. What's the balance, particularly with the technological generation who've grown up with computers, between offering hands-on experiences and digital experiences?
Well, my first answer to that question is that for a smaller museum, our operating budget is only about $3.5 million. So it's hard for us. That stuff's really expensive, and so we've had to go very carefully into that world, and a little bit for us. Let me say this. I have definitely had museum experiences where I have felt like the technology has gotten in the way of my experience with a work of art. And so I'm always sort of saying that to my staff, like whether it's a big label, and some of my staff want to write really big labels, or whether it's a hands-on, station in a gallery, because we're an art museum, that's really our raison d'etre. Yes, the stuff can help, but please don't let it get in the way of and sort of muck up that sort of interaction with a human and an artwork, right? That's the magic of what we do. And instead really make sure that whatever it is, the label, the interactive or the technological thing, it's really enhancing and deepening the person's connection to the work of art. So I'm not sure if I really answered that question, but we're thinking a lot about places just to be. Where you could sit and look out our window at the Wasatch Range, which is really beautiful, or you could charge your iPhone, or you could nurse a baby, or you could put the kid on the floor for 5 minutes. Sort of spaces that aren't the same as the gallery spaces, where there's just a little more space to sort of be. I think that's valuable in our society. A little minute to sort of take it down and chill.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that technology is a tool. Just like any other kind of interpretive tool, and where it's helpful and where it's the best solution, that's great, but you don't do it for its own sake. And so we do have places where we have technology. I think especially in the Black Panther show that you saw. We have oral histories that people can listen to. We had music, and that's that's really valuable. That's pretty low-tech technology. But we also have in the art gallery, we have a wonderful interactive called Draw Yourself. And it's a wall with artist portraits, self-portraits and other portraits, a whole, wide range of styles and historical periods. And then it's a station where you can sit down, you look in a mirror, and you draw your self-portrait, and it comes up on the wall with the artist's portraits. And it really is this idea that, to give people, you can see yourself. We could have not ever done that without that kind of technology. So I think that's helpful, but I think if you really approach it as what is the interpretation objective we have, and what's the best way. But we also know that audio guides and cell phone tours and apps are used by a tiny percentage of the audience. So even when they are there and they're done well, and there's some really good ones, it's not the silver bullet for making the museum accessible, for sure.
Laurie and Gretchen have offered me the opportunity, remember they're chairs of the Education Committee, to speak to the membership of AMD on the subject of education here and bigger topics. And I am really very activated right now about what's happening to art education in the country. I've lived in Ireland, I've lived in Australia. Ernst, I lived for a year in Belgium in 1983. And the experience of those countries and the way that art education is handled is very, very different to America. And what's been happening in the last 10 years is quite dramatic. So just to say to you a couple of stats that bear it up. Here in Ohio, in the last 10 years, we've lost 40% of our school librarians. We've lost 13% of our art teachers, and we've lost 14% of our music teachers in the school system. It's kind of happened by stealth, and it's not something that's declared. I have to say that to you to make it noticed that that's what's happened. But furthermore, this institution was founded on art education, was actually founded with a school of art. We had the Toledo Museum of Art School. And in the 1980s, things began to change, and we actually participated in the change by transferring our museum school to the University of Toledo and building the Geary building. But at that time, in the 80s, it started something that's just increased ever since. The Art Museum ceased to be what I would call a credentialed site for curricular education in art. So in the 80s, you could bring your entire school to the museum and it would count as credentialed, curricular hours. And that stopped. So it became elective to the teacher and to the principal. And so the whole schools used to come here. And we were so much more diverse. Just look at our photographs in the 30s, 40s, 50s than we are now. And so there's a tendency for the private schools to come more than the public schools. And it's really, really insidious and very, very dramatic, no matter what the intentions of the superintendent of public schools might be. So with that little speech, let me say, what are we going to do about the decline of art teachers in the public school system across the country? And what value proposition can art museums present to make ourselves change people's minds?
Yeah, it's discouraging. Well, I think that, again, and some of this is because we're a multidisciplinary museum, so we are really trying to work with the school systems. I mean, the idea of Common Core curriculum has become so, kind of polarized across the country. Common Core curriculum is basically critical thinking, creative thinking, collaborative thinking, developing, using evidence for making an argument. And we think museums are so well poised to support all of that kind of project-based learning, creative thinking, design thinking. So, in some ways, I think maybe part of the way to address it is, I've actually heard, even funders and other sort of government entities talk less about art than kind of creative expression, or the doing culture, the design thinking culture, is we may need to recast it a little bit and actually emphasize, as you all do with the visual language strategy and the visual literacy strategy, is these are critical thinking skills that are going to be essential to our society, to getting jobs, to job advancement. And it's hard to think about it as arts educators that sort of not having the art for art's sake education, but I think if we can reposition it a little bit to say we're helping support skills that are actually critical to leading a successful life, maybe there's some inroads there. And I will say again about our Black Panther exhibition, we had over 5,000 kids come, and including middle school and high school kids, on self-guided tours. And I think because the topic was so relevant, there were real artifacts in that exhibition. You know, you can learn a lot about the Panthers, you know, online and you know, in books, but the fact to see, you know, and kids still go, oh my God, you know, the real thing. There is still a power that we can exercise, I believe.
I mean, of course, I totally agree. In Utah, you know, they have been whittling the arts and even the humanities out of the core curriculum in the state, you know, over these last years. And we actually, as an arts organization, a major arts organization in the state, get money from the Department of Education to sort of backfill in a little bit of art here and there. And I almost feel like we're enabling, you know, that kind of legislation and that kind of sort of short-term thinking. But it really is about. It really is critical to our society and to the health and well-being of all of us to be able to think and speak and to really dialogue with another person about a different opinion. I mean, I might look at a painting and see something very differently and even argue with Brian about what's going on there. And that happens every day in art museums. Those who work with students and docents and teachers and educators. So right, we've thought about sort of recasting, and there's a lot of conversation about STEM, which is science, technology, math, becoming STEAM. Sort of what's that famous Winston Churchill quote? You know, what are we? You know, if there's no art, what are we fighting for, right? So it really is sort of it really is the future, and it's really important that we figure it out. But I don't know the answer to the question.
If Ross would pass the microphone around, has anybody got any questions for our speakers? Have you come armed with a question? Wait.
I'm probably being unfair, but when I listen to your presentations, which are not all about everything you do, but about what you chose to talk about, I thought to myself, these ladies could be running community centers, they could be running YWCAs, they're supposed to be running art museums. Now, how do you, Brian gave us a lecture once on the Forum and the Temple and the continuum that museums are treading between being the Forum or the Temple, and where do you position yourself on that continuum? In that context, how do you keep yourself from moving into becoming a community center and losing, you know, your unique identity?
That's a great question, and I get asked it all the time. And I would say I firmly believe it's an and both. I mean, we are a place of coming together for our community because, you know, at least in our community, it's not a lot of churches or other public spaces that fulfill that role. So we do feel that it's an important role, and we try to really stay in our wheelhouse about what we are good at and what people come to a museum to do that is different. So we base, you know, a lot of our programs still, even if they are, you know, multisensory and involve, you know, fun activities, still in grounding them within our collections, within grounding them within our mission, and I think people want us to do that. They actually do want us to still be a museum. And it's interesting when we've talked about interpretation, because we have a lot of labels and other interpretation that are, you know, first-person voices, the artist voices, poet voices, and, you know, our audience loves that and still wants to hear from the curator about why this is important. So it's a fine line to tread, and I think sometimes we're a little closer on the community center line, and sometimes we're a little closer on the museum line, and I think it's about finding that right balance and recognizing we have multiple audiences. I mean, we have art lovers and history and science lovers that want to see that, you know, real grounding in scholarship and research and collections, and we have people that have never been in a museum ever and don't have any conception of what it means to walk in a museum. So we have to, you know, constantly, try to find that right balance and go, ooh, we're getting a little too close over here. Oh, we better move a little bit more over there. And it's a challenge. But I doubt, though, that I could ever be the director of a YMCA or a YWCA.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I would say the collection and the art in our collection is the beginning and ending of every conversation in many ways. So I think it's important to recognize that every institution, every art museum is unique in the collection that it cares for, if it has a collection, in the community that it serves, in the people and the diversity in that community. So every institution really needs to figure out what makes it unique and special. For us, it's our collection. I mean, and there's great agreement on my staff and my board that that is true. You have to go from Denver to Sacramento to find a collection of African art like the one we have. That's hundreds of miles. So that's what makes us different from a YMCA. But as Lori said, it's then the balancing act of just making sure that whoever you are and however you want to be in that museum, that we're ready for you. And whether you have a deep dive and you're reading every single label in that African art gallery and becoming totally obsessed with African art, or whether you're doing yoga and having a cappuccino and going about your business, you're still experiencing the museum and you're still finding your own personal way in that space. You might do the deep dive in the African gallery the next time you come to the museum.
Yeah.
Hi. What intrigued you to do a series on the Black Panthers? I mean, and were some people bitter about it, like maybe like white people or African Americans, or what intrigued you to do that? I mean.
Yeah, here. Oh, you're on a cord.
So one of the things we try to do are look at issues that are important and have been important in Oakland or in California, but that also have a broader kind of resonance. And because the Black Panther Party was, literally founded blocks from the museum, and the Huey Newton trial happened across the street, it kind of was part of our sort of history and DNA. And we have collections that relate to it because we owned the Oakland Tribune collection of photographic archives. We own a political poster collection. So we had collections that related to it. And we also felt this was the moment. And, honestly, I mean, looking at the parallels between the Black Panther Party and Black Lives Matter, which is, very active in the Bay Area, we felt that it was, really an important moment, and we spent a lot of time thinking about what tact we would take as a museum and as a multidisciplinary museum on it. And we felt that while a lot of people have a certain perception of the Black Panther Party and have a certain image of the Black Panther Party in their mind, the story of particularly the social innovations, the role of women, the role of young people, was not as well known, and that there was a big untold story that we could tell. And so it just was a real fit for who we are in our community, with our collection, with this particular moment. And it was not without risk, but and it was not without some controversy. But then what we saw is an enormous positive response from our community.
But you presented it in a nonpartisan way.
Presented it in a nonpartisan way, but in a way that this is where that conversation about our museum's ever neutral places. What you choose to present is taking a position, just by the fact that you chose to do that kind of topic. So, but it really was transformational for us and for our community.
Thank you.
Okay,
Hello.
last question here. You go.
Hello, thank you for coming. I do have one question. As a young middle-aged person, my question is, I get a little confused in the last 5-10 years of all nonprofits, actually all over the country, that are changing their way of looking at institutions, museums, zoos, symphonies, etc., trying to gear themselves towards the next generations. And it's concerning to me because when I go to a institution like a museum or any of the above that I've mentioned, I like to be educated. And I'm concerned that the dollars that are being spent on researching ways to make these places more accessible, I don't want to use the term, but we're decreasing the level of education that people are getting when they come to an institution, a nonprofit, as opposed to when it was when I was a young child and we'd go and you went to learn something. And so my concern is, in the future, the dollars that are going to be being spent in nonprofits, in museums, symphonies, zoos, operas, orchestras, are we entertaining or are we educating? And if is there a difference? There is a difference to me. Mm-hmm. I go to those places to be educated, but I'm concerned that my dollars in the future are going to go to entertaining more than education, and I really feel that's a disservice to the community.
Okay.
Well, I can respond to just a few thoughts. First of all, the vast majority of nonprofits, and certainly it's true for my organization, I don't quite know how it breaks down here or in Oakland, the vast majority of dollars that pay for the staff who do the work and the labels that are on the wall are raised from private sources, or they're coming from endowment dollars that have already been invested by philanthropists in the museum. So for my museum, I am a state. I'm on the University of Utah as a state institution, but really very, very, very little, I would argue almost zero tax money comes to support and funds my museum. We're looking for sources constantly to support the good work that we do. And I would also, I do understand what you're saying. I would just say, for us, when a child comes to the museum, first of all, how do you define a productive, good, happy learning experience for that child? If you stand a little fourth grader in front of a Picasso, and if you define learning as that little boy going home and being able to tell his mom, I saw a Picasso, he's learned that that's a painting by a famous artist, and there's value there. But for me, it's much more important, and this is how we think about learning and teaching in our institution. It's much more important to me that that child has an engaging and positive, even joyful experience, sort of looking at this thing and trying to figure out, critical thinking, what is this painting about? And why does that lady look so weird? And what was this person, this man who made this painting, thinking about and doing? To me, that positive experience, that little boy goes home, and if his mom says, well, who painted that painting? He may not be able to say it was Pablo Picasso in 1906, but I would argue that the next time he comes to the museum, and maybe it's the next year, maybe it's 20 years later, he's going to have a richer, more personal memory of that experience that will serve him better in the future of those sort of engagement opportunities with cool things like Picasso paintings. Does that make sense?
This is an area where I think that our mission is a little different, again, as a multidisciplinary institution. But again, some of it is the and both. I mean, we do want to try to provide deeper learning experiences. We really see a spectrum. Our audience is not monolithic. It's people who care deeply about wanting to go in more depth into a particular topic. It's people who have been docents or active, members of our organization for years, and we want to provide those kinds of learning opportunities. And we feel a responsibility. We actually do get public funding through the City of Oakland, and we feel a responsibility as a museum that receives taxpayer dollars to make sure that we are welcoming and engaging all of the citizens of our community. So we feel that responsibility. But in some ways, I think we have come through the path I was describing to actually see our mission as much broader, and actually see part of our learning mission is to make a difference in our community. So our mission is to inspire all Californians to create a more vibrant future for themselves and their communities. So it's broader than learning about California art, history, and science. So some of the learning is, I learned that my story matters. I learned that I'm part of a broader community and can connect with our neighbors. So those aren't traditional, museum learning goals in terms of, art, history, or science content, but we feel that is part of our mission, is actually to make that broader public impact that we feel is equally important.
I'm reminded by your comment about the foundation of the British Museum. I mean, one of the great museums of the world, which was founded to be educational for the studious and entertaining for the curious. And so this idea that we can't have both, and we should have both, I mean, education should be fun, but the balance I think that you're talking about is more to the tune of this temple and forum idea is really a balance between collections and people. So it's, do we concentrate on the collections, and like we always did here, I mean, here we are, we've got great art, come see it, right? Or do we concentrate on the opposite, like, hey, can we get involved with you, and by the way, we have a collection? So that sort of paradigm between one extreme and the other is something that we have to negotiate, and we try to negotiate it between the ideas of curious and studious and educational and entertaining. Okay, I'm going to give you one last one. Okay, he's got his hand up very high, which is...
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that I am a huge fan of the Toledo Museum of Art and have been for many years. The question I have, and I've discussed this with many people, I'm in sympathy with what you're saying to an extent, but I'm also in sympathy with what this lady has said, and I'm wondering if this change in institutional viewpoint, is it being driven from the top down, or is it coming from the bottom up? I mean, I'm getting a real sense that this is being imposed from the top down. A lot of times, I don't think that the opinions or the concerns or the tastes of the people on the bottom, the people of the community, the people that are actually, supporting it, don't always play into this. And so I'm kind of curious, how do you know what the community wants, and how do you know, how do you strike a balance with that? Because I think this is a really difficult issue.
Well, there's a whole lot of issues there, and their guests sort of answered them. Just to go to a few of the things that would be prompted immediately by that, are we really here to, do what everybody wants, right? There's a question. Do we decide what to acquire on the basis of what everybody wants? I mean, these are provocative questions, right? But the key is a visual image I'd like to leave with you, which is that, it's not about like top down, bottom up. It's about us and them. So if you put us inside a circle and them outside the circle, that kind of describes the way it has been. And what we're trying to do is to make the circle porous, right? Or if you like, just put a big cross on it. And so to create the intersection between the people and what we do as a professional organization. And it's that balance is a very fine thing, and it's something that we're exploring, and I think there's multiple books to be written, there's multiple conversations to be had, but the very fact that you're asking it is in itself a questioning of a model which needs to change. It does need to change, but it doesn't need to lose either. So it's a fine balance, and to be interrogated and questioned is the way to go forward.
Yeah, I think anytime we think of that sort of winners, losers, that's a hard spot to be, and for us, it's yes, I'm not a curator. I didn't come from that path in this work. I came from the people side, and for me, I don't know many people. I don't know many people who love and value art more than I do. But for me, the magic of the museum is that it is the place where people interact with art objects. And they go as deep or as shallow as they feel like that day. They can have a terrific docent who just blows their mind, right? And turns them into, they go to college and they become an art history major and become a curator. That stuff happens. Or you can come to the museum that day feeling sad because your boyfriend broke up with you, and you can sit and look at an incredible work of art in this museum, and it can make you feel better. And do we really have to say that's a good experience and that's a bad experience, or that's an intellectual and educational experience and that's a weird personal experience? Do we have to sort of have that sort of yes or no feeling about it. And for me, it's nothing is lost by thinking about how we can serve our visitors as openly as possible. That's what I think.
It's fascinating because I would say in our case, it's absolutely been from the bottom up in that we talk to people all the time. We talk to, we have a major program of visitor evaluation. So when we redid the art gallery, we talked to over 2,000 people. So the questions and the way we've responded with our programming is directly coming from our community. And it's all of these things that we in the museum profession take for granted. And then, like teenagers say, why are all your walls white? We feel like we're in a hospital. So we painted our walls different colors. All of the conventions that we take for granted, either as people who've worked in museums or people who've gone to museums all our life, for people who haven't had grown up in museums, these things are a mystery. So the way we installed our galleries, the way we do our labels, and it's not, as Brian said, it's not like we just throw it open saying, what do you think we should acquire? But we are really responding to visitor questions. Maybe we'll do that. But we hope and we're striving to respond directly to the questions that our community and our visitors have.
I mean, I worked for a museum director 20 years ago who referred to the public as the great unwashed. And we didn't work very well together. And I also have talked to curators. I've had curatorial colleagues who have really admitted that they prefer it when their galleries are empty because they know nothing's going to get messed up. So I feel like we've come a long way, and I always say my favorite educators, museum educators, are people who care deeply and know a lot about art, and my favorite curators are people who care deeply and know a lot about their audiences. And so it's not an us and them, it's a coming together to really think about the visitor and who they are, who they might be, what they want, and how we can deliver that to them as best as possible. That's the beauty of the work that we're doing right now, I think.
Great. So just to end, I want to refer to Professor Ernst Wagner's work. So this is the Common European Framework of Reference for Visual Literacy. It's actually a very large document. This is just the cover. And this document was prepared in Europe and with support from the European Commission. And it has a very particular issue, which is an issue for all of us. Part of the challenge of the arts is that they're quantifiable over a lifetime. But how do you actually quantify their benefit now, particularly in a culture that demands proof of concept? And so what this document does in a rather wonderful way is develops not standards, but advices to the education system about how you can develop competencies for visual literacy. I mean, how would you know that somebody was visually literate? And so this is a competency-based curriculum. And it was just fascinating and wonderful to discover that this work had been done and that it would help to infuse the work that we're doing here on multiple levels right now and to build our curriculum around it. And so we've had a great day thinking about visual literacy and explaining what we're doing here, but also learning from great people. So Ernst, let's just thank you very much indeed for being with us. And may we offer our guests, Gretchen Dietrich from Utah and Laurie Fogarty, Oakland, the warmest of thanks from Toledo. And finally, thanks to all of you. I see many art educators in the audience here, and you do amazing work, sometimes against strong odds. But we do it together, and we know how much it matters. And so as we face challenges potentially to the funding of the NEA and the NEH, but more particularly to the tax deductions that are offered to charitable institutions in this country, which include art museums, there's a big political shift that's on the way here. And we did have an editorial in our newspaper recently suggesting that, well, why would the government in Washington be supporting art? But it's to completely misunderstand the NEA. which literally distributes grants to every state in the country and to every constituency in the country. So artists are going to be affected, and art museums. We get a grant from the Ohio Arts Council. It's the only federal state money we get. We're totally private institutions, so 280,000 of 16 million. But it does matter. It does matter. That's like the endowment of, 12 million or so. So a year at 5%. So it's a big deal, and I'd invite you to think about that, and to help us to challenge the argument. If you do agree that the arts matter, well then funding of the arts matter. It's certainly if the military budget is to go up, fine. That's a decision for the government. But that doesn't mean that the tiny fraction of 1% in this country which is spent on arts funding by the government needs to go down. Or at least that would be my contention. And so I put that to you on behalf of our Toledo area cultural leaders, so 27 leaders in our arts organizations in this city. And we have a great city for the arts. We're so fortunate that we have all these great arts in a small city of just over 250,000 people in the city and 600,000 metro. We love you all. You visit us all the time. You support us all the time. Go tell everybody that the arts matter. Okay? Thanks a lot.